When 99% of your life is work, either you are really bad at what you do, or you are completely off balance with the rest of your life. Neither is something to be proud of. Jerome Jari, and you can find him on Facebook at Jerome Jari, Jerome Okay. Beautiful quote. I love it. Never really thought too much about it, but let's hear what he has to say. Jerome Jari dropped out of business school at age 19 and moved to China. Love it. After failing in 6 startups, he focused all of his energy on cracking social media, and within 12 months, his videos about happiness and challenging fears reached 1.5 billion views. Hoorah, dude. Awesome. Again, we celebrate other people's successes. Give him a hand clap. Making him a pioneer of the mobile video industry. In 2013, Jerome co-created the first mobile-only advertising agency with Gary Vaynerchuk and helped advise some of the largest companies in the world pairing influencers with brands. In 2017, after supporting local NGOs across the globe, Jerome united 50 of the largest mobile influencers through Love Army, which raised $2.7 million for the drought in Somalia and spent every penny directly on the ground. What an amazing soul. What is the book or books you've given most as a gift and why? Or what are 1 to 3 that have greatly influenced your life? Jerome says Propaganda by Edward Bernays, along with the documentary The Century of the Self. This book opened my eyes to the marketing industry in a time when I was blindly playing my role in it. Essentially, Edward Bernays is the ancestor of the entire marketing space. He is the father of all marketing gurus and agencies. He became fascinated at the beginning of the last century by what Hitler's army had created, a complete illusion, propaganda, that millions of people in Europe believed. And because of the bad reputation of the word propaganda, he renamed it public relations and created the first PR firm in America. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's funny because the word propaganda, we look at it like a negative thing. So he changed the name of the word. Conspiracy theorists. Did you know who created that word? It was the CIA. It's very interesting. But not to get off topic, how brilliant is it? Because he rewired his brain and took a negative and alchemized it into a positive, like we always talk about. Well, how did he do that? He took an idea that had a negative word attached to it. The perception was negative. And what did he do? He changed the word completely. It meant the same thing. Changed it, created a whole new thing to describe something that had a negative connotation, to change the perception and make it positive. Is that not brilliant? How can we do that in our everyday life, in our personal life, in our professional life? So if we say, hey, leadership, actually, let's not say leader. That is a novel in itself. If we said, hey, we have, I'm going to go back to safety. We have a safety department that essentially is hated or disliked or discredited or not trusted or not respected in the working environment. And maybe that was because safety in that environment has a negative connotation. So what would you do? Well, you'd probably have a safety campaign, right, to steer it to positive. But you could also manipulate it, and you could use a negative safety word, exchange it for a new safety word, turn it into something positive, and just reinvent the wheel in a different way to get people on the mission again. There's lots of examples of this. There's lots of ways to do it, but we're going to keep reading. Unfortunately for humanity, he was choosing his clients based on how much money they were willing to give him. Interesting, okay. Like 99.9% of the agencies do today. So he ended up helping the pork industry by convincing people that bacon for breakfast made man stronger And he helped the tobacco industry by making cigarettes the symbol of the women's rights movement. It was his job, and I get that. But again, positive versus negative impacts on the world. Those things that were just mentioned actually had devastating impacts on the world. But let's just go to say the idea of it is brilliant. The idea of it is brilliant. Just like no one would ever say, and I'm saying this as an example because it was mentioned in this paragraph, no one would ever say what Hitler did was good, because it wasn't. It was horrific, it was evil, it was disgusting. But in that same regard, from a different perspective, you could say that how Hitler did it was brilliant, as far as how he convinced millions of people through propaganda to believe that an entire group of individuals was bad and evil. There is brilliance behind the mastermind of it. There is disgusting evil behind the action that was taken. So I am separating the two. Please don't think or quote me and say that I think Hitler did something great. I would never say that. But we do have to separate the two and understand, even though what he did as a marketing agent pioneered and changed everything in the marketing industry and the marketing organization forever, I still have to acknowledge the fact that it doesn't always mean that you use the powers that you have. He had the power to create amazing ways to deal with marketing and public relations, but they had negative impacts. So I do at least want to say, if we're going to use this, let's do it in a positive way. Change the world one day at a time. I am passionate about the life of Bernays because he did everything wrong. He chased money over purpose, fame over impact, and he had massive regrets on his deathbed. I read that on his deathbed, he was preaching against the use of tobacco. I know the marketing and PR industry is not going anywhere, and it's probably too late to reverse the effect this guy had on all the marketing gurus had on the world. But my hope is one day Bernays' book and the documentary on his life will be the first thing students have to read and watch in business and marketing school. Okay, I'm so glad that I continued to read this after I said that, because he understands as well. Like, he invented and created a new way to do business that was brilliant, but the act in of itself had obviously negative impacts. So he is even saying, how can we do this but still have better impacts? Love it. Right now, his life is being ignored by everyone for a specific reason. It is hard to look at yourself in the mirror. I recall speaking about Bernays' life and legacy at a marketing conference in Germany. The organizers were furious. They were hoping I would give them tools to sell products on Snapchat to millions. You can never please anybody, okay? Let me point this out really fast, especially in the HR world. I used to see this all the time. It does not matter. You will never please everybody. You can give, I did this. I watched it happen multiple times. Like the first time we gave everybody across the board $2 an hour increases. There were people still complaining. There were still people saying it wasn't enough. Redoing the bathrooms that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to give nicer facilities to people. We had employees that would smear shit and feces and pee on the walls and clog the toilets of brand new bathrooms that cost money simply because they were upset. Obviously, it wasn't a good company. But there are different ways to handle things. Catered holiday meals. Do you know how many people refused to even accept one dinner that was for free that the company just wanted to get? Not pizza parties, like catered, very delicious meals. They refused. They'd let you know they'd refuse. And I'm saying, you can have animosity towards a person, place, thing, an employer. But if I were to change the perspective, I'd say, how do you think the homeless or someone in a less great country as the United States, or someone who's battling with homelessness, or they don't know when their next meal is going to be? I would just like to say, sometimes in those moments, we can say, thank you. I really appreciate the free meal you're offering. Obviously, I'm still disgruntled about some things that maybe we can talk about, but I really appreciate you guys giving me the meal. Why? I know that there are people out there that haven't had anything to eat in days, and they don't know where their next meal will be. Now, does that mean we have to live compassionately and just change the path of our life because there's someone out there that has something going on and we have to feel bad? No. But sometimes in those moments, we can look at it from someone else's perspective. Not every moment. I'm not saying every moment. Because we wouldn't live, right? If we stopped living because we were scared of having something nice that someone else didn't have, we're not living at all. But sometimes there are moments when we can choose to do that. All right. What purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months or in recent memory? I spent $4 to park near a beautiful lake in Oregon. I took a swim and had a $1 trillion moment with the water. Oh my gosh. When I tell you, spend the money and the time to do something, if it's eating at you, or if it's like, what if an event costs you $10 and you're like, I don't want to spend $10 or $50? What do you waste $50 on? Let's be real. Look at your bank statement. What do you really waste that kind of money on? Now, okay, so if you're going to spend the money anyways, do it on something that's an investment in yourself, in your future, right? Maybe that is a parking spot near an ocean or a lake that all of a sudden that light bulb went off. Do you know how many times I've been in the shower or in a meeting or taking a hiking trail or going into the woods in the middle of nowhere and just meditating, or meditating in general? How many times a brilliant thought has crossed my mind? I carry a notebook with me everywhere now for a reason. You don't know when the next spark of genius is going to come into your brain. Okay? You just don't. So keep a notebook. Write that stuff down. How is a failure or apparent failure set you up later for success? And do you have a favorite failure of yours? Most of what I do looks like a failure at first. That is awesome and I love it. What a way to never be bothered by a failure than when you're like, most of everything I do is a failure, and then it works out. It's all about the mindset and it's all about perspective. You're going to see this theme be reoccurring in every book we will ever read, because life truly is 100% about perspective. When I dropped out of business school to create my first startup, 75% of the people I knew thought I was going to regret it all of my life. And some even said that I would end up homeless. When I quit my struggling tech startup to start making videos online, everyone around me saw it as a shameful escape and a waste of my time. When I quit the influencer marketing agency, Gary Vaynerchuk, and I co-created to pursue social media for good instead, everyone thought I was completely crazy and losing my mind, but a huge source of income and a huge source of income and a guaranteed future. Let me just say, this is actually happening to me in real life. I've made significant life changes over the last couple of years. First it started with mind, body, spirit. And all of those things led me to a different pathway, my true pathway, actually. And one of those things was the environment that I was working in. So yeah, everybody thinks and has for the last couple months probably thought I was a little crazy because I changed my entire existence, including my career. I quit my job. I started my own company. I started doing podcasts. I started writing a book. I started doing all of these things that I had already wanted to do, but I was scared. So I conquered my fears and I started doing it. And guess what? It brings me so much joy and happiness. I'll be up at 2:00 in the morning making videos. If it's a weekend, I'll be making videos. It's a weekend right now. Is it because I don't want to take the time to relax? No, because it's like going outside and playing basketball. It's just something I like to do. It's a hobby. What I'm actually doing that's essentially has become my way of living, my career, it's just another hobby to me. So it doesn't matter how many hours I work and when I'm doing this and when I'm doing that. Why? Because it's not work. I just love doing it. Yeah, everyone says I'm crazy. But what if in 6 months, they all look back at this and they're like, holy shit, that was the best thing you ever did. And I'm going to tell you something else. I talked about a death and a rebirth in the first or second episode where everybody has that moment in their life where they have a death and a rebirth, where they kill the old part of themselves and then they rewrite their entire existence and start a whole new life. It's a new chapter. Every time I've done this in my life, it was always the best thing I ever did. So the first time I did it was when I moved from Colorado to Illinois, and I was homeless. I was bouncing between my friends' houses and I had nowhere to go. So one of my mentors bought me a plane ticket because I was poor and homeless, and it was the best thing I ever did. And then I got married, and I finally had the courage to get a divorce after, 5 years, and I was told, you're going to regret this, and guess what? It was the best thing I ever did. Every time in life something catastrophic happened that required me to change my entire existence, it was always the best thing I ever did. The risk was always worth it. Does that mean I've never had failures? Absolutely not. I've had so many failures in my life. I have had so many trials and tribulations, so many forks in the road, just like all of you. My perspective, my mentality. I don't quit. I don't give up. You're going to bet against me, and then you're going to watch me win. That's the winner's mentality. It is all about perspective. So, what did Jerome continue to say? Turns out, hilarious. Turns out they were the best decisions of my life. Light bulb. Because each one of those difficult decisions that looked like failures at first took me a bit closer to my real self. I could cry. I just said that. Every death and rebirth, every time I took the risk, every time I reinvented myself, every time I started over, changed every single thing about me. My metamorphosis was the best decision that I ever made that looked like a failure at first. And now I am the closest and most authentic version of myself. It's beautiful. Each one of them empowered the real me. Each one of them woke me up from the illusion. At this point, I can see a clear pattern of rejection every time I try to get closer to my real self. So the feeling of looking like a failure has become more of a fuel than burden, alchemizing the pain. It's beautiful. I am a living testament to this entire book. You probably are too. Everything that they're saying has probably already happened to you and then some. It's just, how are you looking at the message? How are you looking at the fork in the road? Are you like, I've had the worst life. It's beat me down. Like, all these things always go wrong. It's always me. It's always me. Like, why? Nope. Give me the next challenge. I'm going to freaking win. Why? Every time you overcome a challenge, all you do is get better. You're just more successful. You gain experience, wisdom. It's valuable. So instead, have the mindset of, bring me the failure. I'm gonna climb that mountain and overpower it. What you got next? Flirt with the universe a little bit. All right. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say and why? Interesting from a marketing person. Let's see what they have to say. Somehow having an audience on social media feels like having a giant billboard for millions of people every single day. I wish we could all start seeing it that way. I know so many people, for example, who were against Trump, but were talking about him, criticizing on their social media every single day. Would you put someone on a giant billboard that you don't want to see elected? Probably not. We truly don't understand social media. A good book that would help us is Understanding Media by Marshall McLuhan. It should be the online behavior Bible of the 21st century. We all use media 24/7, but most of us have never truly studied it. I do want to say really fast, I think it's extremely critical, if you do not understand how marketing works, that you actually go read a book about marketing. Why would I do that? Marketing is psychology. And if you understand how marketing works, you understand the advantage that other people already have over you. What does she mean by this? For example, there are marketing tactics that are very manipulative and purposeful to get you to purchase or do things. And it's down to the smallest things. Everything is perfectly by design, including from the marketing agency, right? So if you walk into Walmart and you're going to check out, what's right next to the cash register? Is it gum, candy, chips? last minute sodas that are cold. Why is that? What's the height of the shelf? Where is the candy on the shelf located? Why am I asking these questions? Well, product placement is extremely significant, right? Did you know that companies will pay higher dollars, higher amounts of money to have their cereal boxes or their candy put on a specific shelf that will only be visible to the eyeballs directly staring at the children who are going to ask you and mom and dad for that stuff, right? There's a reason that the candy and stuff is at the checkout counter because parents aren't going to go to the candy aisle unless they had to get candy, which most of the time we don't. No, they put it when you're checking out right in front of your kid's eyes so that your child will start nagging you and asking you for it. And they know that more than likely 5 out of 10 times that parent's going to give in and buy it. Why? Because it was sitting in front of them. That's it. That's all it took. And then you look at when you start seeing companies that have had the same container or box or whatever their product is in or logo, and all of a sudden they change it. Like, oh, there's a reason for that. Well, it could be a billion reasons, but the first one that I would think of is, ooh, what did you do? What's your global footprint look like? Did you have bad, horrific court case? Did you get blasted in the media? Did you have poor quality product? What happened? Do you know the pain it takes for a giant company to change their branding or their logo? Do you have any idea? They don't do it just to do it. There's a reason behind it. So I'm getting off on a tangent. Let's go. All right. Back to your question. I would like 2 billboards. One for, of course, the marketing guy wants 2 billboards. One for something I tell myself when I have a difficult decision to make that goes against the odds. And it is make yourself. I think we spend too much of our time trying to please everyone. And if we forget that it's already within your instinct, your inner child, your soul, all of those know what's good for you in the world. The public opinion of your friends and strangers online, not so much. The second is a quote from a very special man named Christopher Carmichael. You are 99 years old. You are on your deathbed. And you have a chance to come back right now. What would you do? I have used this one many times when faced with difficult questions. When I met him in China 7 years ago, I didn't speak any English. So he gave me a couple of books to read, to practice, and get used to the English language. One of the books was The 4-Hour Workweek. Oh, I gotta read that. I read it so many times to practice that I think I was speaking a little bit like you, Tim, for a while. Oh, Timothy. What is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've ever made? 4 years ago, just before Vine was about to take off, which, guys, if you don't know it, Vine was an older website where they made like memes and like quick videos that were super funny. That was before memes and like TikTok quick videos and reels existed. So it was like the first version of them. I decided to pursue it full time. If I wanted to make it happen, I needed to leave Toronto, where I was living, and move to New York. New York is one of the prime cities for marketing and advertising, and I had this desire to create the first mobile influencer marketing firm. So I took a leap of faith and asked my business partners at the time how much money was available for me to move to New York. We had nothing, but one of our associates said I could borrow $400. Imagine that. Moving to New York City with $400. I knew nobody in the entire United States. All I knew was that I felt a call to go, and I had to trust my gut. I booked a bus ticket from Toronto to New York for $60. I slept on the floor of a friend of a friend of a friend, and here I was living in New York. Same story, just a different person. The insurmountable celebrities, famous and highly successful individuals that have told their story, and the same running theme is they had nothing and risked it all. There's your key. Get over the fear. Risk it all. What are you meant to do? What's your purpose? Who are you meant to become? And why are you holding yourself back? J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter series. She became one of the richest women in the world at one point, next to Oprah. She is still one of like the top whatever richest women in the world. When she wrote Harry Potter before it was published, she was homeless living in her car with her kids. How many Hollywood actors? Jim Carrey. How many of them have came out and said, I was broke, I was homeless, I was working at a restaurant, I had nothing. I believed in myself. I moved to LA. That's all I did. I believed in myself. I just tucked it out. I took the risk. All of them, they all say the same thing. You have to believe in yourself and you have to get over the fear. Take the risk. All right. Within 7 days, Gary Vaynerchuk and I started Grape Story, the first mobile-only influencer agency. I was so broke and didn't want Gary to know. So I started sleeping at the office of his company, VaynerMedia, showering at the nearby gym, eating leftovers that his team was forgetting in the company fridge. This lasted for months, and during that period, my posts on Vine started to intensify. I was inspired by New York, so inspired that I didn't mind the struggle of being broke in such an expensive city. I think it just took about 1 year before I moved into an apartment. My goal had never been to grow a huge following, only to study the app by using it. But in New York, I somehow found my style and the audience just liked the content. In June 2013, just a couple weeks after moving to New York, I grew from 20,000 followers to 1 million in a month. That same month, our agency started being profitable. Even though we were making money, I kept sleeping at the office because I didn't really have the time to find a place. And I think I enjoyed it for a while with the hustle of sleeping on the floor in a Park Avenue South office in New York. It had its charms while it lasted. When I was able to take my first paycheck from the company, I bought the iPhone 5. That was the first time I had bought a new phone instead of a second-hand phone. I did it as an investment to improve the image quality of my Vines. This was also a really good investment. Yes! I originally had some shitty $10 microphone for this podcast, and I just said screw it and purchased this like, I don't know, $90 one. Totally different. I actually refilmed the first episode of this because my original microphone, you couldn't hear anything. Tiny investments. All right. What is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love? Not absurd, but it's something I didn't do for most of my life, and I don't see many friends doing it. So I assume it may not be very usual. Before eating, I pray, not religiously, but for setting intentions. I do this too. So I do pray religiously sometimes, but I pray for setting intentions. Like I pray out loud or internally to myself, these are the goals that I want to meet, and please help me get there. Please provide me guidance to get there. And then like I will sit there and continue to ask, what's the best course of action? And then I'll take a bunch of notes in that notebook I carry around that I highly suggest. I try to feel grateful for the food on my plate, especially if I happen to have an animal product on it. Maybe it's an egg or a chicken. Most of the time, my nutrition is plant-based because it makes me feel the best and it costs the least to our planet and environment. I just want to add, when I changed my diet to plant-based, I've never had more energy and I've never felt better than I do now in my entire life. I could legitimately operate off of 2 to 3 hours of sleep every single night if I wanted to. I've done it recently. I don't because there's nothing wrong with sleeping and, it's sleep. So whatever. But it is amazing what you can improve upon in your life, mind, body, and spirit, simply by changing your diet. But for example, when I spent roughly 4 months in Somalia for our Love Army mission, we didn't have the luxury there to eat plants. We had to eat chickens. I am fine with eating animals when we have to, as long as it's done respectfully. Feeling gratitude for the animal's life is a good way to honor it. Everything we eat, be it a tomato or a chicken, is carrying light within. The light feeds us a lot more than the calories or protein. By acknowledging this light, by acknowledging the divinity of everything created by Mother Nature, we can feed ourselves twice. It's like when you're a kid and you have a stuffed animal. They say stuffed animals only become real if you believe they are real. Same thing with the light in your food. I've got to follow Jerome. He absolutely knows what he's talking about, even if it sounds a little crazy. He is dead on, 100,000%. In the last 5 years, what new belief or behavior has most improved your life? All right, Jerome, a belief. The belief that we are all mini gods. I mean this in the sense of creators, in a way that should not feed our ego but our consciousness. This means the entire universe is not just outside us, but also within us. We have unlimited power, the power to solve any problems facing us or facing others. We get to create our realities. It's a simple and small belief, but it can change the course of humanity. Being mini gods means we never lack. We know we already have everything. We don't need $1 million. We don't need 1 trillion followers. We are complete. We are full, so full that we can give without counting. The day we will all start acting like mini gods is the day there will be peace in the world. Okay, he is infinity to beyond correct. That is a whole nother conversation, but essentially what he just described is the same pathway I went down, spiritually, and how I have literally got to where I am today by following exactly what he said. And I've never read this passage before. He is onto something, and we will table that for another. That is a very long, that's a whole episode right there, people. But he is true. He is right. What advice would you give to a smart, driven college student about to enter the real world? Ooh, don't trust the gurus. Whether a marketing guru or a life guru, don't trust me, folks. Don't trust me. Anybody telling you he knows better is more than anything disempowering you, because he is placing you below himself and above. The guru separates himself from the rest of us. Anything that creates separation is always an illusion. In reality, we are all united, all the same, all small parts of the same bigger thing, which is the universe. It's true. We are all a collective. I am especially thinking of all the online personalities telling you to work harder, telling you that they are working more than anybody else. When 99% of your life is your work, either you are really bad at what you do or you are completely off balance with the rest of your life. Neither is something to be proud of. Anytime you see someone preaching, remember that this is smoke and mirrors. My other advice is to enter the real world as soon as you can. And by the real world, I don't mean for you to do an internship in a marketing company. I mean for you to get off social media, get out of the big cities, reconnect with what's real, nature, your soul, and your inner child. So this is beautiful that I came across this. This is what I work on with my TikToks, on my other podcast, the YouTube channel that I'm creating. I meditate outside every day in the grass, and others join me with this meditation, yoga, stuff like that. Nothing makes you think about the world differently more than for 1 week, go outside, sit in the grass with no shoes on and no socks for 20 minutes a day in the sun. If you want clarity, it's right there. All right. Respect yourself. Most of the world is asleep today, playing a small role in a gigantic illusion. You don't have to be. You can choose a different life. It's all within. You will know the answers when you take the time to find yourself and trust yourself. If you are studying business, PR, marketing, then drop out today. The world is already full of marketers and businessmen. The world doesn't need more of that. The world needs more healers and problem solvers who use their hearts. Your heart is 1,000,000 times more powerful than your brain. Bravo. Bravo. What are bad recommendations you hear in your profession or area of expertise? Oh, I love this section. It's like my favorite. All right. Jerome said, I have my feet in 2 industries right now. Social media influence and the humanitarian industry. Oh my gosh. I bet those cross paths very interestingly. The worst recommendation that I hear in the influencing world is coming from marketing gurus who preach that if you build an audience and you start promoting brands to them, you can be extremely rich and successful. That's cute. But remember the story of Bernays. Oh, I love his professional cattiness. He said cute instead of, yeah. Promoting unethical or unhealthy companies for money is not success. It is actually called corruption. Not corruption at the political level, like we are used to hearing, but corruption of your belief system. Corruption of your legacy. I know so many influencers who promote products they would never ever consume. But when the paycheck is $500,000 for a couple of Instagram photos, what would you do in their shoes? Let me just say one thing. He's right. Because when that company hits the fan and they lose everything because they were unethical or they were corrupt, you also hit the fan. Your name goes down with them. Look at Hollywood right now, not to bring up politics. Everyone attached to P. Diddy and every work he's ever accomplished and everybody that was in any work that he created, it's tarnished. There is no legacy other than bad. Think about that. I would have been in those shoes, and I am proud to say that I had to take some of my own medicine that day. Around the time I was starting to really question the advertising industry, 2 years ago, I was offered $1 million contract for a big Snapchat series called For Sour Patch Kids. I told them that I didn't eat those candies and would never eat them in front of the camera. They were fine with it. I even remember telling myself I would never eat one of those candies, even if their marketing director, who was signing the deal, asked me. That day was a difficult battle between the illusion of needing money and the incorruptible inner voice that told me not to do it. I turned down that $1 million contract. I even recorded the scene of the meeting and put it on my YouTube. Gary Vee was in the room. He was negotiating that contract. I made myself proud that day. The worst advice anyone with an online audience can ever receive is from marketers. Gary says it himself. Marketers ruin everything. Perfect. Okay. Now that we've said that and we got it out there. The worst group of people I have ever had to deal with in an organization besides an accounting department, and I have an accounting degree, I dabbled in accounting for a while, is marketing. In every organization that I've worked in, unfortunately, everybody in the marketing department was in a box and they couldn't see outside of that box. They cannot build the relationship to the rest of the organization to understand the actual company, the mission, the product, the value that they were marketing for. So my mentor, a lot of people actually said this. Every single person that was hired for the marketing agency should have had to go to all of the facilities, all the corporate offices, and understand exactly the company that they were marketing. How do you market something you don't understand? Right? And when you're not willing to work with those around you because you think that you know everything or it's the better way. You don't. You just don't. I can tell you right now, there's a reason why you should consider the opinions and thoughts of others in an organization or even your family life, your personal life, before you make that decision. You need to understand how it's going to impact other people. Your decision will impact those around you in your environment, in your life. But before I continue to get off on a tangent, we have got to finish this because this is the longest one I've seen so far. We still have a whole another page. I can't believe it. When it comes to the humanitarian space, the worst advice you will ever receive is trust the big NGOs. They know what they are doing. As sad as it sounds, humanitarianism is, at this point, a giant industry. Yep, I believe it. I have seen so many people raising money for a cause. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions sometimes, and feeling like they aren't good enough to organize the relief mission themselves. They believe that if they trust a big, well-known NGO, things will be okay. Sure, it's a safe choice for you because it totally drops the ball. Suddenly, your work is over. But is it really going to help the people who need it? Not sure. When we raised money for Somalia, we decided to organize everything ourselves, to ask advice from local NGOs, but to never drop the ball. I repeated it. Why? This goes back to the marketing department in any organization, or your personal life, or any organization. Again, if you're making business decisions, but you don't understand all the moving pieces in that puzzle, you are setting yourself up for failure. So, for example, I used to say, like, if I went into another manufacturing environment, or if I started a new organization and there was a production line, it would be in my best interest as a new HR manager to spend 2 weeks on that production floor, day in, day out, with the employees doing the job. So I understand what is taking place. Do you know how hard it is to make a decision that is valuable and necessary in a company that can actually make change when the person making the decision has no clue what the hell they're talking about, right? Like, if you're a VP making a decision, like let's say it is a shoe company, you're the VP of a shoe company, and you tell everybody that you're going to change the ingredient in the shoe. And it just so happens to be the main ingredient. You're like, it'll be fine. There's plenty of that ingredient. It's not going to hurt anything. Maybe no one, will even notice. So you send the email, or you make the phone call. You tell the people, the powers that be below you, hey, drive this. This is what's going to happen. This is the new mission. Drive this, shoot it down the thing, work on that, right? That's what they get. Here's my idea, go with it. And then they do. And, maybe they'll talk to a couple people in those departments, or, do some research, but that's what they do. But do they go out and do the job? No. Why? Why is that important? Well, I'll tell you why that's important. Okay, for example, the chemical in the shoe. Did the CEO consider whether that chemical is legal in all the states that he operates in? That his company operates in? What about the shipping? What's the lead time on that? Does it work with their supply chain department? Does it mess up their customer orders that are already in the system? Now you have to, this is the funniest one. Now you have to work with all the cross-functional teams because you just changed a process. So if you have a standard operating procedure, what do you now do? You change that. That trickles into a bunch of other departments. Oh, well, that's going to require overtime. Did you mention that to people? Because now you got to consider for the overtime. Was that in the budget? Do we have to worry about allergens? Now do we have to put labels on all of our products that say we switched the chemical and now there's an allergic reaction that could be present? Do you see where I'm going with this? One change, one insignificant change, is everything when you don't understand. So if you're in a position where you can make decisions, but you are making decisions about something that you don't have the understanding of, you are failing. You are that company's, that family, that relationship. You are that failure. You will be that failure. So even if you don't have time to spend 2 weeks on that shop floor trying to understand what everyone's doing, ask the questions, do the research, be prepared, but don't just make decisions. Don't just impulsively, especially as a business owner. If you're already a manager, a VP, if you're already in that company and you're already in that role, you have the opportunity to change it for the rest of your company going forward. Stop allowing people to make decisions without working with their cross-functional teams. If you're in a marriage, if you're in a relationship, should you be making decisions without your partner? No. Why? Because you need to understand how that will impact them. You need their buy-in, their support, their ideas, right? Unless it's just you, which even then you stop to look, how will this impact me? Why? Why? Root cause analysis. All right. In the last 5 years, what have you become better at saying no to? Somalia was a challenging time for me, as I had to separate my time between organizing our mission and communicating with our 95,000 donors. Wow. I had to be very mindful of where I was putting my energy, and in this process, I started taking a different approach to my phone. Instead of considering every DM, every email as the most important thing in my life, I started looking at things as energy. Is this email empowering, or is this email taking power out? I realized most of the time the answer was taking power. Remember Most people are asleep and forgetting their inner powers. So they think they need to take power out of others to feed themselves. I have now learned to say no to any of those solicitations. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do? I was supposed to mention this in the last episode, but I forgot. I said, hey, I'll share at the end what I do to get focus and, blah, blah, blah. Meditation. Go get in the grass, shoes, socks off. Get grounded. They call it grounding. Get in Mother Nature and just let all the thoughts disappear from your body. Just sit in the sun, in the grass. It's the easiest thing on the entire planet. So simple. I do it every day. All right. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do? I simply try to ground. And to ground, you need to touch something real. This can be by swimming. Water is real. By meditating. Oh my gosh. Your heart is real. By being in contact with an animal. Animals are real. Or by enjoying a delicious meal by yourself under the sun. I love being alone with food. By eating slowly and putting so many intentions into my food, I've started to develop a stronger sense of taste than I used to have. So, when I eat, I tend to get very emotional with the taste of food. These types of little real moments get you out of your head. He's right. So, to close out this episode, I have a little treat for you. Quotes I'm pondering. Timothy Ferris. Ernest Hemingway. Oh my gosh. I love Ernest Hemingway. He was a renowned American novelist, a short story writer, and of course a journalist. All right, what did Ernest have to say? He said, I happen to be in a very tough business where there are no alibis. It is good or it is bad, and the 1,000 reasons that interfere with a book being as good as possible are no excuses if it is not. Taking refuge in domestic successes, being good to your broke friends, etc., is merely just a form of quitting. Wow. I actually love that. That's beautiful. Next one, James Carse. He's a professor of history and literature of religion at New York University, and he was the author of Finite and Infinite Games. I bet that's a damn good book. And he said, poets do not fit into society, not because a place is denied them, but because they do not take their places seriously. They openly see it as roles, as theatrical, its style as poses, its clothing costumes, its rules conventional, its crisis arranged, its conflicts performed, and its metaphysics ideological. It's all about perspective, isn't it? And finally, the last quote, and this is by Tara Brach. She was a teacher of meditation and emotional healing and the author of Radical Acceptance. And the quote is simply, be the silence that listens. I don't even need to say anything to that. It's beautiful. All right, team, listeners, I hope you received some valuable information from this podcast, this episode. I hope this resource has been great for you. I hope that you listen to some of the things that these amazing wise people have said, because I think they've had a lot of apparent failures that have made them very successful. And I think we have something to learn from them. All right. See you next week.